You're tuned in to the Bold Business Podcast, and I'm your host, Jess Dewell. Welcome. Every conversation that I host here is to spark an idea to get down to the right business right now without losing track of your long-term business strategy. Join me on my pursuit to identify the right work to be done, how to do as much of that right work as possible, and to navigate your toughest business decisions. My goal is to bring you high-quality knowledge, experience, and tools that allow you, enable you, and empower you to make bold decisions as an entrepreneur and a business owner. Don't forget, subscribe and press the bell icon to never miss a program. Share your thoughts, your questions, and your ideas in the comments below. We thrive on your feedback and engagement. The conversation that I had with Chad Jenkins, I'm so excited to bring you. Here's the thing. The thing is, there are a lot of concepts that you may have heard a little bit before. You have not heard them this way. So listen closely and figure out how can you leverage this. We're talking about opportunity. We're talking about value creation. And through that, we're talking about defining clearly what is conventional thinking so we understand what we're not doing and what we are going to work to let go of. Not to mention, we're going to be talking about claiming our business knowledge, because many of us tend to go with the status quo or what the trends are. And guess what? Knowing what you know in business, the decisions that you have been making, you have more knowledge than you may be giving yourself credit for. So claim it. And another thing that you will hear in this program is all about whatever questions you ask are going to be the answers that you get. So the power of the question and making sure that you have the right question is incredibly important. And we're talking about why it is bold. We are talking about why it is important right now. And we are talking about how what you're doing right now will set up your next and your next and your next. So let me tell you about Chad Jenkins, President and CEO of Seedspark. He's a lifelong entrepreneur. You'll hear he actually started to figure out what his unique gift was at age of 8. And he's a visionary. He reshapes businesses to deliver remarkable returns. There are groundbreaking methods he has brought. His curiosity is boundless, and he is a catalyst for business growth. He collaborates with leaders across industries. He uncovers hidden opportunities and adds enterprise value along the journey, not only at the end when it's time to exit, but through the journey to benefit and grow and change in real time with what's presenting itself to you and your teams right now. He's empowering others through the growth collaboration partnerships and the Seedspark Growth Academy. His new book, Just Out of Zero, is a guide to outperforming competitors and achieving exponential growth through collaboration. Enjoy our program.
3 words every day, 3 times a day. I have to look at, I have to click them off. Present, appreciative, and inspiring.
Wow! You are listening to the Bold Business Podcast, where you will hear firsthand experiences about what it really takes to ensure market relevance and your company's future.
What is a situation that is typical where people get stuck?
People get stuck whenever their budget doesn't align with their growth objectives, most often, because they interpret that to grow, they've got to invest a lot more money, maybe launch a marketing campaign, expand manufacturing, hire that sales guy oftentimes, or maybe expand their product or service offering. And I often beg to differ.
Now I'm just curious because I'm guessing.
I have a way around it.
Yes.
As far back as I can track, starting at around the age 8, and with the awareness that folks are typically motivated by 2 things. I'm going to use 2 positive ones, fear and love. Obviously, a lot of times people say fear and greed, and that would be 100% true. I choose to use love more. So they want something or they're afraid of something. Both of those happened to me at the exact same moment around the age of 8. And I wanted a lot, and I felt like I had nothing, so I was very fearful. So what that made me do is it sent me down a path to looking at things from a little different perspective. And those things that I look at a little different perspective are all the resources and capabilities you already have. How can you use them to recombine and create more value? So I've been doing that since 8 years old, and that's what led me to here even today. Now, to circle it back to what the question that you asked, so oftentimes they're referred to me because they need unconventional thinking to create those unconventional results. And a lot of times they're coming to me and they want conventional results, but they feel stuck. So a lot of times I'm able to look at all of their existing resources, their relationships, their team members, their products and services. It could be their packaging and their messaging. It could be all of the above, and see ways to recombine their people, places, and things to create more value and empower them to not only get through whatever they're challenged with currently unconventionally, but also create some pretty sizable unconventional results. Oftentimes it ends up where they're launching some new product or service offering, leveraging everything they already had at their fingertips, but leveraging the power of collaboration with others and their people, places, or things to create something that their market has not yet seen. And I'm a big proponent of naming, huge proponent. I'll give you an example. If you have a baby and I have a baby and we don't name it, is it yours or mine? I'm not really sure because they look very similar. Yours are probably going to have a little bit more hair. But so we don't do that personally, but we do it in business every day. So they're creating intellectual property every day. So in that scenario where we've looked at their immediate resources, we understand how to recombine them to create more value. We've leveraged the art of collaboration by naming it because you brought something new to the market. You're enabling your hero target, or a lot of folks will use target client profile. You're enabling them to ask for it by name so that they want that new product or service offering that is much more higher value. Well, by doing that, you just wiped out the competition.
I think we all know what we think of when we think of conventional thinking. But for our conversation today, to make sure that we're shaping it in a box and we're bringing everybody along with us, what do you consider to be conventional thinking?
The easiest way would be best practices. So you can go to any industry conference, you can search on Gartner, you can pay some money for a report, and it's going to give you best practices, whether it be margins in your industry, cost of goods in your industry, your overhead, your expenses, your gross profit, and I could continue on. The packaging, the messaging, and the pricing. And a long time ago, I started thinking about it. It's like, okay, best practice is best practice. I said, all right, great. That's a milestone. I'll give you that. But we interpret best practices as average, right? That's what it is. Out of the people that do it well, the most people that are doing it well, they've pulled together and done some research and like, okay, this is best practices. I'm like, great. That's average. I'm definitely not a Me Too guy. I'm not looking to be average at all. So that to me is definitely a byproduct of conventional thinking.
This part of conventional thinking and shifting it, does it start by actually listening to somebody's hopes and dreams that they might think they're supposed to be average, but actually aren't?
Yeah, listening is super important. God gave us 4 inputs and 1 output. Obviously I won't be able to do that on this podcast, but I try to do that use them proportionally as much as I possibly can. I was afforded the ability, obviously at 8 years old, if I'm able to track back, and that's when I first started figuring out how to create value. I spent time with my fathers and people of that age as a kid until I graduated high school. Therefore, I grew up in the South. Keep your mouth shut and be respectful to your elders. So by default, plus I'm okay just being in my head. I have tons and tons of questions. I'm very naturally curious. So I was just a sponge taking in the good, bad, and the ugly of the way people operated. So that listening foundationally required, absolutely. No matter what level of success you reach or obtain, you can always do more and have more of an impact if you're listening, not speaking.
I will tell you what, I'm going to name a temper tantrum as an adult. As an adult who is giving a temper tantrum, by the way, you all know when they happen. Everybody who works with you will be able to tell you what triggers you. And so you can smile and go, not me, yeah, me. That's all here. We've got that. And that's actually the other piece of it is, what are those things where when we're feeling defensive because we're not being heard, it's because we're trying to be put into a box or put into a place that we can't understand or that we don't want to be because we see something else, but we haven't figured out how to bring people along with us. And that's a little bit where conventional and unconventional clash, and it's the unconventional that will win out when there's a path through.
Yeah, a path, the communication, very important. And I live in a world of outcomes. Always, always, always. So the path in which to get from point A to point B, there's millions of options, millions. And the only thing that's constricting us is what's between our ears and our ability just to leverage what we were given at birth. Just let it go. And so I have a couple things. Obviously, my first book was named Just Add a Zero. Oftentimes in a very similar concept, which I did at a very, very early age as well, which that contributed to the fear that I had. Oftentimes in business meetings, a lot of times folks are wanting to accomplish something and they're 25 or 35% growth, and a real simple concept: why not double? Just please, why not double? And then if you embrace the way that your brain works, let it all out. Well, here's why not double. We can't do this. We can't do this. We can't do this. And then there's another little thing that I use often, which is super powerful. Under the same concept of letting your brain work the way that it does and it's intended to, just harness it. Add unless. The power of unless. After you let your brain tell you all the reasons that you cannot double, add unless to every one of those reasons, and then let your brain do what it will do naturally, which is give you the roadmap to creating, or let's see, what was it? We wanted to grow by 25%. And then this weirdo asked, why not double? And just took us through a little process. And all of a sudden we have the roadmap to grow by 100%. And they had no idea that they could do it. Why? Because they were inside of a box, because they just got back from a conference and somebody in leadership saw it on the big, beautiful PowerPoint that this is what your gross profit should be. And this is what your overhead should be. I'm like, why? Because he said so? No. Ask yourself some larger questions, because you have all the power inside of you. Which is, of course, and now if you're sitting in that meeting that I hypothetically orchestrated, how inspiring is that?
Oh, not at all.
Yeah, not at all. They're asleep at the wheel.
Maybe there are people that like that, but for me, not at all. Thanks, though.
Yeah.
I feel pressure. I feel overwhelmed. I feel, well, if everybody else says that this is the case, I'll tell you, Chad, I'm going to share a story with you. And I know some of my listeners have heard this before, but there are a lot of people that will be listening to this one that haven't heard this before. And that is, I had to earn an earnout during the dot-com crash. I had to continue to grow big in a technology company in a big way. And nobody told me I couldn't. And I was the only one who did. So all the other departments were like, nope, it's a downturn, it's whatever, blah, blah, blah. This is the way that it is. And here I came. I didn't know any better. And I was doing all of this. And it never occurred to me until much later that I was like, I don't understand. Well, it's because somebody said it. So everybody rose to meet it. And so we've got to remove the baseline, or I'd like to make a trap door in there or something like that. That'd be super fun, right? Or I guess a ramp if you're talking about summer camps for your actual real life horses for your 12, almost 13-year-old. But that's right. We got to be able to break through somehow. And it sounds like these two questions will do that.
Oh, if you want the right answer, you must ask the right question. Always.
And sometimes it starts by using the different question. Yeah.
Yes. More questions. Whenever in that hypothetical scenario, which is hypothetical because we're conversating about it, I do it very, very often, including many companies I own. The folks that are in the room, when you ask big questions like that, it's real easy for them to come up with the why not. And whenever you add the power unless, it's real easy to get their buy-in because they're creating the roadmap of the how.
Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's a focus on the questions. It's paid me so well over the years.
Well, because we all have the cycle of business. It's just happening at a different time for each industry. Mm-hmm. And I like that too. That's when we're willing to look a little farther, how can we figure this out? Share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. I thrive on your feedback and engagement. You're listening to the Bold Business Podcast, and I'm your host, Jess Dewell. This is your program for strategizing long-term success while diving deep into what the right work is for your business right now.
Maybe you are or know a company that is looking for support to double their revenues to $3 million, $10 million, or $25 million. Jess Dewell will roll up her sleeves to quickly understand your growth strategy and assess how you work with uncertainty, how much stamina is being used to make decisions, and how your current priorities align to your long-term growth goals. You can schedule a complimentary consultation to find out more at reddirection.com. And now, back to the program.
If I have to get the courage to speak up in said meeting, because I'm in this orchestrated meeting that we're talking about in our example here today,
Yes.
do I just need to swallow my fear and speak up and say it? Or have you found that there is a way to move into this or create or find a certain opening with which to start asking that bigger question, especially if we're not the torchbearer?
What a wonderful question. I would leave, in my experience, Jess, whenever, and anyone's welcome to, first and foremost, just add a 0 to a number. That'll get it. That will definitely spark some folks' ideas because it empowers their brain to do what comes naturally. And when I talk about just add a 0, and it unpacks this in the book, you can add it to the back. Everyone understands that. Oh, you raised the number by 10 times. Great. But oftentimes I'm adding it to the front. So instead of having this hypothetical 10, what if we did the same thing, had the same output, or grew by our goals, but we went down to 1 salesperson, an example, not 10 salespeople, when 4 of them are out to lunch anyway. Foundationally, asking that first question, whether it be why not double or just adding a 0 to a number, I'm looking for consistently things that spark what my brain does naturally. So giving and empowering your teams with those questions as a beginning point, I think the rest takes care of itself. So when you ask questions like that, and I mentioned it earlier, your brain, my brain, even the quiet introvert's brain in the room is saying, these guys are absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Here's all the 19 reasons that'll never become. We don't even have a sales team that can sell what we needed to last month. What are you talking about? We're going to grow by double. They almost emotionally would just blurt it out, which is okay. That's what we were looking for. So it might not be in the very first meeting, but you'll have some contribution for sure around the table. But in the second meeting, when they know it's very safe, that we are going to think unconventionally. Why? Because we can create unconventional results. Once you walk to a meeting in that scenario one time, it's empowering to the others that are sitting around the table, at least in my experience. That's a great question, though.
Thank you. And I recognize that as well. I'm usually the one that they bring in to stir the pot.
That's very surprising to me. Very surprising.
Are you sure? No.
Yeah,
Because I'm like, all right, that's fine. Fearless. No problem. Actually, that's not true. But in the grand scheme of things, I'll ask a question out of well, how come not this? And so it's important, though, because I think, to your point, we all have it in us. And all it takes is one question to create a pause, and magic can happen in that pause, only with which to that curiosity of our brain. And to your point, what our brains do naturally, to repeat you even. I want to know what was the coolest reframe you have ever done.
Yeah, so at a multifamily facility that I'm a very large investor in, and I'm a sponsor, so that means I'm pretty close to the top. There are some developers that have put this thing together. It came over $5 million. This is back during COVID. $5 million over on a $30 million project, which is not a good percentage to be over.
No, that's not.
So the particular type of financing, which is a federal vehicle, non-recourse, very attractive at face value, but you can't change the ownership structure. Therefore, we're going to come up with this $5 million. And everybody's standing on the sidelines with their hands behind their back for obvious reasons. The cheese has definitely been moved. I'm saying, whoa, hold up. This is the best financing on the planet. Yes, they've been quite a bit over, but the market is continuing to move in the same direction. This is an opportunity. And it absolutely was. So being able to capture a lion's share more of the investment just by looking at it from a different perspective, the thing is an opportunity zone. It's going to be wildly successful, and it's in the path of progress. The whole world has changed, of course, during and through and after COVID, but just being able to look at that particular situation different, I dare say is going to have a 3 times return above what the original projection was.
If I can't get far enough into a reframe because my fear or my risk intolerance is showing up, then what?
Call me.
Ta-da!
It is pretty easy.
I didn't mean to set it up quite like that.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually going to have a completely different answer as to where we could help, etc. But ultimately, if you're stuck and it's just not in you, that's okay. We all Everybody who was ever created is a genius. Most people would not even try to find theirs. Only about 1% will go and do the homework to try to find it. I know exactly what I was built to do and exactly what my unique capabilities are. So it's really easy for me to look at it just from my wiring and my upbringing and the way I've approached business for so many years. So now I do it as a business. So if you get stuck, you're welcome to reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation, and more power to you. And of course, I like to partner on future money, only on outcomes. So it may be something I might have interest in if it was something that's gotten way out of balance, so to speak. Anytime there's a change, and this is a fundamental understanding of mine, anytime there is a change, there is an opportunity created. In one of the earlier businesses, I was thinking early 2000s, obviously we know what happened on 9/11, and a lot of stuff changed. That was not too far after the 2000s, which you mentioned .com earlier. At every time, and I thought about this at a very early age, at that time I should say, when there's as many people on earth as there are, and they have to every day, unless we all work remote, which has definitely changed a lot over the last couple of years, but at that particular time, they have to get up tomorrow morning and they're going to leave their house and drive most likely, or ride public transportation or the other to get to their place of work. That's not changing. So whenever you have that many people in motion doing things, unless you have 100% of the market, you still have a lot of opportunity. The good thing is whenever you have that level of monumental change in your industry, your vendor or your market or your pricing or your financing, it creates so much opportunity. And by way of creating an opportunity, everyone's running to the left. Why don't you just run to the right? Look at it from a different perspective and say, okay, what has changed? And then what opportunity did it open up? Because there are some statics. And I gave you an example of those. At that time, there were 6.7 billion people on Earth. Great, that's a lot of people. I promise, at that time in the business I was running, I did not do business with 6.7 billion people. There was still a lot of opportunity for me. And I find that very, very often, no matter what the type of industry, no matter what the geography, it could be all over the planet. I was talking with some in Sweden yesterday, and they had that in their industry, and it opened up an immense opportunity. And the good thing about this particular organization, they had all the capabilities already on staff. They already had the systems. They already had the web and digital platform just to make a small tweak and go capture that opportunity that was opened up. Guess who's not doing that? Their competition. That's who's not doing it. But unless they looked at it that way, they're doing the same thing that everybody else are, getting prepared for layoffs, reducing their price. Oh, we're going to make it a race to the bottom. Let's go ahead and get this inventory moved because we don't want to get stuck with it. Guess what? Everybody else is doing that. So you potentially even, and I'm just now thinking about this, you potentially even could, again, leverage what your brain does and write down what you think you need to do, and then look at them and grade them. Is everybody else going to do this? Check mark, check mark, check mark. If that's a true statement, make a white line on the right side of the whiteboard, write the exact opposite, and then just say, why not? Like, that's a very simple process that somebody could go through to give them the perspective of looking at things a little bit differently.
So maybe from your own personal experience or business owners that you've worked with, how have they moved from where they were at of going, wouldn't it be awesome to be able to have a clear understanding of what might be happening and anticipate well, to actually going, oh, I actually do this and I have a grasp on this and I am anticipating well?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. It's one that I created a methodology for a long, long time ago, a little bit by accident. And then I've got words that make it very easy for me to remember. So it's remove the film. And for me, just like you would buy a new phone, everyone I'm sure listening has done that, a new car, you've got the plastic on certain things. But when you peel that plastic off, it's like, ooh, that became a lot more vibrant. Or a new TV. And when you don't take the little bit of plastic around the frame, it's really, really small. But when you do, it's like, oh, that's a lot cleaner. So in anything, you're making it better. By making it better in business, you're creating value. What are the indicators that point you in a direction to being able to create value that nobody else is even looking at or focusing on, or even a lot of times they're running away from it? And that to me is friction. So film for me stands for friction identification, leverage the market. So whenever you are driving into work, or this morning, the first text message you got or the first phone call, which is a little bit abstract this day, it's probably a text message or email. It may have been formed in a normal way, which is a complaint. For me, when I see trending through complaints, that is opportunity, 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 because those are frictions. So to your point earlier, when folks are asking them the questions, they want to have the intuition. Always, always, always focus on your hero target. Be really, really clear on who you want your business to be a hero to. And in those times in which there's big change, if you can potentially take a big step back and let's write down what we think we know, even old school, because there's been a big change in my industry. What do we think we very much understand about our hero target? And then because of this change, let's try to figure out where the film is. Where's the friction that we can identify? And then let's validate how much of our hero target does this friction apply to. If it does, and you're the first to identify that friction and figure out a solve to it and offer it to your hero target, you just remove the rest of your competition as well. So remove the film is a strategy I use almost on a daily basis, but definitely on a weekly basis. And it works for all different industries because it is focusing on those that you would like to be a hero to and making it, this is, of course, a fundamental rule, make it easy for people to do business with you.
Yeah.
Business is not super complicated. What makes it complicated is us on a daily basis. And the funny part is, then we'll go away for a quarter, we'll go away on an annual offsite. What do? Decide to get back to the basics. Great. And then we get back to the office, and what do we do the next day? We make it more complicated. So we don't have to do that. Let's focus on who we want to be a hero to. Let's figure out what's causing them friction, and let's embrace it. And then you begin to write the competition out, which is actually quite margin friendly.
I'm hearing change from the top. In everything that we're talking about. Is that a fair hearing to have?
It's a fair hearing to have because in obviously the role that I've always participated in is at the top. It has to come from the top in the way in which we're looking at it, but all the change, all the real value creation change is coming from the bottom. Focus. The folks who are actually in the trenches or the field and they're delivering the value, they're on the headsets right now, listening to what we would perceive as complaints. And a lot of us are recording them, every call that comes in. I have a pretty large cybersecurity managed services firm. Every call is recorded. And they're looking for quality assurance, of course, which we hear at the beginning every time we call a large company. I'm also, and we've got algorithms where we're looking for things that introduce complaints and we try trending to them that enables us to be way out in front of the competition. So yes, change from the top from a strategy standpoint, but the real value, whoever's most client facing, because it's all about those hero targets. And if you want to take it one step further, you want to improve culture, it's all about who is there at the front lines. So listening to the frictions that they have is quite empowering from an HR perspective to help us not do the convention. Oh goodness, what is it? The ping pong table in the break room? How about a beer keg?
Yeah.
Okay, great. But if we're listening to them, there are other frictions that could be empowering your organization to separate yourself from your direct competition from a talent acquisition strategy. It works inside and outside the business ultimately. So remove the film has been extremely empowering for years and years for many organizations, including every one I've ever owned.
In a very loud world with more and more access and so many things that are becoming a lower barrier to entry on many levels, that difference is better and the noisy is easy. There's
a little book. It's called Built to Sell. I'm sure many folks have read it. It's actually a wonderful book.
Yes.
This particular guy was just stretched out trying to be everything to everybody. And when he made the decision, listen to his mentors, and ultimately this guy decided to, instead of being a true marketing firm with all services, which is extremely hard, I owned one, he decided to do logos. 18 months later, he got an offer for, I think it's $6 or $6.5 million. So to me, my simple brain, he made a decision to do one thing. 18 months later, he had created $6.5 million because in theory, and of course you read the book, you can pick up on, he didn't have anything to sell until he made that one decision. So focusing on the one thing for me is absolutely value creation. I am drawn to and attracted to ways to create value inside the organization, outside with your existing resources, just the way I'm wired. But if for anyone who's listening, if you could always just focus on that one thing, yes, it will manifest in different products and services. But every time you get a chance, what is at the core? What is at the root? And how can we improve our messaging around that one thing, that value creation that we do better than everybody else? So you mentioned it, Differentiation is very positive, and then focus on that. Concepts that I'm introduced to, I'm wired up to find the practical application or practical applicability is one thing that I often use. So I have a very good friend, Dan Sullivan, who wrote the book with Ben Hardy, Who, Not How. Practical application for me, very, very simple, and it will likely be one of the next books I release. Nothing new without a who. It's probably been, whenever this book came out, so that's a couple of years now, maybe. Yeah. But shortly after reading it, I said, great, but how can I throttle myself? That was it. Nothing new without a who. That means, and of course, I'm somewhat of a little bit of a visionary. I come up with value creation things in my sleep all the time. I put them in my Apple Notes at 3:00 in the morning, and there's always a dash, and I have to assign it to someone, not me, someone else. So nothing new without a who was my practical application of the concept, who, not how. Yeah. So empowering yourself to break it down simple to the first step. What is the one first step? And in an example I just gave, that first step, it's not me. It's not me. I'm empowering somebody else to take the first step. And guess what? They're a lot better at doing it, to be honest with you. They are not wired up like me to come up with the concepts and to be able to identify this invisible value that I say is right there in front of everyone. But what they are really good at doing is taking that first step. So find someone who can help you practically apply the concept that you have learned that is going to be empowering to you and help you grow.
And it may already be internal. Please look there first. You built a company. And then after that, please look outside and don't stop, because they actually might be there. You just haven't seen it yet.
I'll give you an example where you can leverage the outside. I focus on collaborations, and I talk about being able to identify the invisible value that is created with a combination between people, places, and things. That's exactly it. So in this scenario, I would absolutely always look internal. Sure, absolutely. Those are resources that you already have. They, in theory, already align with your vision. So they want the betterment of the company or whatever the objective is. It makes a lot of sense. If you don't have that resource internally, you can always look outside for a collaboration partner. These objectives, these concepts that we want to implement in our business, or objectives that we have for our business, I don't think we want to do them because we want less gross profit and less net profit. We want more. If you're the visionary who's been exposed to this concept, whether it's reading or et cetera, and you know that properly implemented, this is going to have a very positive impact to your business, I would challenge you, and if you need a collaboration partner in that, there are those out there as well, to understand the true impact that it's going to have on your business. And I use that concept often because I'm just the same. Any of these concepts are out of my struggle along the way as well. So I leverage future money all the time in businesses, whether it's one I own or one I'm helping to help grow, because they do not have the immediate resources to take advantage of that. So leveraging a collaboration partner who is just as confident at producing the outcome as you are with whatever your unique value capabilities are, if you partner with them on the outcome, they'll just split the money in the future. So I do it all the time. It's a concept that folks don't even consider, especially small to medium-sized business owners, and it holds them back. When there's somebody out there who's really good at whatever you need to complement what you're trying to accomplish, please consider, I encourage you to potentially use collaboration to help you along your growth journey.
I think that's an incredible point to bring up, because we don't, right? And I'm saying I'm one of these people, okay? I'm one of these. I'm a medium-sized business, or I'm like, I can't get a loan big enough for that, or I don't want to get a loan right now because of whatever, or whatever it is. So now I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking back to earlier in the conversation when we were talking about, what if we just double it? What about that add a zero? And it could be in either direction, as you said. How does that look, right? So that exercise comes into play here also to open that door and expand this possibility, because that's actually one thing I can tell you, and I'm speaking to the choir when I tell you this, but when we feel like we are, and maybe you may not be in this, so I'm including myself in this one. When we feel like we are squeezed, or we feel like there's only one path forward, even if that turns out to be true, it doesn't mean opportunity is absent.
That's correct. Opportunity is abundant.
Always.
Abundant. Always, always, always. Yes,
so
always.
I like rocks and hard places. Can I be real with you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. If everything was good always, how would we know what good is if it's always the same? It's not. And we don't grow when it's not like so obstacles, albeit sometimes, and of course, in the heat of the moment when your phone rings or you get that email, you're like, oh, darn it. It was supposed to close Thursday and there's no way it's going to close Thursday. Hold up. There might be an opportunity to get about 20% more because the market has changed. But if you look at it as it's just not going to close Thursday and that ruins your weekend, it's on a Friday, hypothetically, I choose just not to look at it that way. First, I want to say, how can I embrace this change? And no matter if I'm on the other side as well, how does it improve my position, even from a point of leverage, to create a much bigger outcome? Because oftentimes you will get the answers that you seek when you ask those right questions. Let those obstacles come, though. Good gracious, they come anyway. Ultimately, and you just validate it, they're going to come. There are no, roses and daisies forever. That's just not the way it works.
I'm your host, Jess Dewell, and we're getting down to business on the Bold Business Podcast. This is where we're tackling the challenges that matter most to you with actionable and achievable advice to get real results that lead to your success. Don't forget, press that bell icon so you never miss a program. And it's time to subscribe as well.
Focused on growth? Listen to more programs like this which support the challenges and opportunities you are working with right now. Come on. Search Bold Business Podcast for the key terms at reddirection.com or your preferred podcast listening app.
I was like, oh, we can remove potentially an obstacle here. So if you're getting results that you don't like, if you're getting information that you don't like, I bet you it's because of the questions that are being asked.
You have to ask the right question.
Yeah.
And continue to ask questions. The natural curiosity, I probably had a little bit of an advantage, not having a bunch of formal education and being naturally curious. I'm constantly full of questions, even inside of my head. But over time, that proves quite beneficial because you end up looking at things a little bit differently.
There's a lot of mindset going on here, a lot of mindset. And I'm listening to you and I'm like, sure, I'm pretty positive. Sure. I was telling you in the green room a story where my whole morning was made by total strangers.
Total stranger. Absolutely. Yeah.
If we're even closed to the little things like that, we'll be closed to the true opportunities of the big changes that we can make. And I know every single person that goes into business, whether they sell and somebody takes over and it's a leadership team, it doesn't matter. Whoever's running the company at whatever stage it is at has some sort of a mission. And if we're accidentally thinking small, this is a problem. So our mindset must be big. And when we're talking about mindset and we're talking about, I don't know, I'm not talking about like butt puckering big, but maybe I am talking about that. Why not? Personally, I think the bigger the better. The more, because then you can see it won't be a straight path, but there is a path. So how have you worked with companies around mindset? All of the things you have are illustrations of that. But when it comes down, I'm going to just say, this is a mindset thing. And so let's talk mindset for a moment.
Yeah. Fundamental mindset is absolutely required for me to engage. And I'll give a little bit of context around that. They do not have to think exactly like I do or have the same capabilities. It's foolish for me to think that they could because we're all made unique. But understanding their why, I call it their unique value contribution. If we can get on the same page as to what that is, then a lot of the other things that the thinking tools that I built, we have something called the Seedspark Collective, which is a collection of all of our growth partners that kind of support each other. There are ways to help them shape the overall mindset that equals the exponential growth. But fundamentally, we have to be true into what is our why. One of my favorite books is the Simon Sinek, Start With Why. Please start with why. Because you can be moderately successful. And I'll tell you, how could you be moderately successful? And this is probably going to ring true with quite a few of the folks. Let me show you, right? So out of frustration, or they just want to show somebody else that they can do this, that'll take you a long way, but you will run out of gas. You'll get to a place where, oh my gosh, I had some level of success, but what's next? What else is there? If we don't start with the why, or if you do start with the why, it lets you soar past that. So for me, understanding what their unique value contribution is, how are they creating value, understanding their why is paramount. Beyond that, I've spent a lot of time in creating thinking tools to help them. And we've gone through a couple of them. Why not double? Yet leverage the power of unless. All of those things help folks get in the right mindset or help continue foster the right mindset. But foundationally, we have to have that core understanding of what their why is, the unique value contribution.
So what are the other things that you do, right, that stretch that curiosity? Maybe it would be a good question for me to ask you.
Leveraging the power of your subconscious is super important for me. So I write down 2 questions every evening right before I go to bed. And just doing that helps. And and I do try to make them quite abstract. Sometimes they're not abstract. I literally have a big old obstacle in front of me, and I haven't yet figured out how to get around this thing. So I'd like to feed it to the supercomputer, which of course is your subconscious. By doing that, a lot of times you talked about 3 o'clock in the morning, which is absolutely 100% true. I wake up naturally. I have a very defined bedtime, 8:58. And a lot of people,
I like that.
A lot of people
I like that.
they think that's crazy, but if you think about it, don't say around 9. Don't do that.
Yeah.
You might consider picking out your time. If it's 9:17, you know what happens? Every time you look down or you're looking at something that's a clock, you're doing the reverse math between that and this hypothetical 9:17. I regimented the time I go to bed. Obviously, 2 questions to really leverage the power of my subconscious. I'm going to wake up between 3:30 and 4 naturally. And when I do, I very first start with gratitude, keeping my eyes closed. After that, still. Sometimes I have to box breathe like they've trained Navy SEALs to do.
Yeah.
But once you get, and not so much anymore because now I can get very present very quickly and I do a lot of meditation, but I then move into meditation. Guess what shows up? The answers to those questions. So abstract questions, leveraging your subconscious, come up with your own routine. You don't have to, of course, do mine whatsoever. I just created it, but it really works for me. And understanding that at that time of the morning, you're at the highest melatonin. So people wake up naturally and they're like, oh, I woke up last night. No. Embrace that. Just lay there, be still, embrace it, and leverage the power of your subconscious. You end up coming up with those answers. So that's the way that I stay curious about things that are just a little bit unconventional for me.
Can I ask you a really personal question?
Sure.
What were the questions you asked last night before you went to bed?
Oh, goodness. So I have one M&A transaction going on, and it has a pretty unique, I have 2 of them actually, but one has a very unique structure, and there's a large impediment. It's a misvaluation from the person who's selling. And then I have one organization I'm exiting as well. Those were my 2 questions for last evening. And sure enough, I come up with a very creative way to solve for both of the objectives for both parties. And it was delivered this morning about 7 a.m. I'm happy to report the closing is now set. Yeah, it's a really good deal.
I appreciate you actually sharing your process too, because I'm always fascinated by the process that people take. I know for me, it takes me like 30 minutes to get into something. Box breathing, meditation, or otherwise. It used to be longer. So I'm like, cool, I got to do some action. And then everything will click together, and then I find the flow super fast. But I have a rev up, and there's nothing wrong with that now that I can embrace it. I used to think
that's right.
Wrong with that, right? That's
no, it's you. Absolutely.
That's right. And so to be able to embrace, oh, look, I'm listening to you. Boy, wouldn't that be awesome? But hey, I got it down to 30 minutes. And hey, that 30 minutes means I'm going to randomly take care of other stuff that would possibly be distracting thoughts in between. So instead of having to fight distraction through it, I've done it all. Leverage it. That's exactly right. So that's my little, I'll add that to this, because curiosity really does matter. And slowing down does matter. It's all there if we're willing to listen. And I'm going to say, listen at every sense, whether what we see.
I have 3 words, and I'm not sure which book that shared this with me, or if I came up on my own. But I have 3 words. You mentioned alarms earlier. My lovely wife does as well. They're hideously sounding. To a guy who used to be on a big phone company, I carried 2 phones when I was single. Oh my gosh, that's a horrible idea. So I don't use those. I do use reminders, and actually they're on my phone currently. 3 words every day, 3 times a day. I have to look at, I have to click them off. And it's present, appreciative, and inspiring. Those are my 3.
Do they change?
No, not for, no. Those have been consistent for quite a while. I'm not saying they cannot change. Absolutely they can. This is your show, make it yours. But the empowerment that has just that, your alarms, it grabs your attention. Mine does too. Even though it's silent, they pop up. I have to click it off because it's a reminder, but it's going into my brain consistently. And it makes me take impulse. Yeah, something could have just happened. It was the last email, it was the last text message. Probably not an email for me because I farmed that out, but it makes me be appreciative for who is managing all my email. It makes me be inspiring to the person who may be causing the conflict. It's still my responsibility to be inspiring. And the only way that I'll be able to do that, presence. You have to be attentive to everything.
Totally. That's actually something I come by naturally. You right now, Chad, are my absolute positive most favorite thing. Just like when I was 8, making those houses for my ponies was my favorite thing because it was in front of me. I'm so present all the time and I can get there. And people are, what's your favorite? I'm like, what was the last thing that I did around that? Because that's truly.
That's really cool.
And so that's very cool that you use that to help you anchor in.
I really began to use it when I did some more research, and I understand that everybody who is listening, you and I as well, we have about 2.2 million inputs per day. Do you know how many we can absorb?
Like 11. I'm kidding. It's more than that. But it's
130,000.
There you go. 130,000.
So what that really means is our brains have the big finger on a very rapid firing delete button. But I'm deleting things that you're not. You're deleting things that you're not because of our personal experiences. So the more present that we are, we can begin to understand other people's perspective and try to align with it and just understand. Not that they're wrong or right. They have different inputs than we do. But in doing that, you begin to really connect with people. And that's where a lot of value creation can actually organically happen.
We could talk about this all day. Let me just tell you, I actually really love this concept of presence and how do you get close and how do you do this. And by the way, one of the reasons I believe, and I'm going to speak for myself, and you can tell me if you want to add anything to this, but my perspective of our conversation today is that presence that you've been cultivating not only reinforces all of the work that you have done, and reinforces what your uniqueness is, but it is the thing that allows that to show up so that you can truly be real with people.
Yes, be real and understand where they're coming from. And understand, I mentioned earlier, the remove the film. The only way that I'm able to really spot those things and create businesses that other people have never even seen, they grow really quickly and have nice margins, is I'm present to understand those frictions are actually opportunities. They really, really are. And it creates an immense amount of value for those that you're likely already serving. Like they're already in your billing system, but now they just love you more and they spend more and they stay longer. And guess what that equates to? Bigger and greatly enhanced enterprise value. Because every day, every one of us at one day is probably going to exit the businesses that we have today. I'd much rather be focused on creating a lot more enterprise value along the way, not the last year or 2 years that it takes to get prepared to sell.
What makes it bold? What makes it bold to be intentional about creating opportunity?
There's a wonderful book, and you're welcome to take this one. I'm rereading it probably for the third or fourth time. It's called Clear Thinking.
I love Clear Thinking.
It's awesome. So the social default, the ego default is the worst one for me because it just stop, be present, and also don't respond. Good Lord. Apply rationality. The particular one that answers your question, I feel like the social default or the inertia default is not being impacted by those biological responses that come so naturally to us. Obviously, it's biological. That makes it bold. But the only way you can do that is do not react. Take a big step back, and you can do that physically if you need to. And some people need that. Whatever the anchor in their brain is that enables them to create the outcome, I'd strongly suggest and encourage you to do that. So when I talk about stepping back, if that's what helps you catch yourself, catch your subconscious, catch that biological response, it empowers you to be bold. And I promise you, other people are watching and looking, and you become a leader over time because you're just different, right? So that in itself, it enables you to be bold.
This is just one program I've created in the pursuit of identifying the right work to be done and then doing as much of that work as possible, because that's where success happens. We're talking about building businesses that last. The Bold Business Podcast equips leaders, business owners, and management teams with the strategic mindsets and the practical tools to navigate the ever-evolving business landscape. Before you go, remember to visit reddirection.com for solutions, articles, and more programs like this one, created to help you navigate the challenges that you're facing in your business today. Don't forget to follow us on our social media channels to keep up with all the latest insights. It is bold to pursue building a business that lasts. Until next time.
Wow! Jess hosts the Bold Business Podcast to provide insights for building a resilient, profitable business by deeply understanding your growth strategy, ensuring market relevance and your company's future. It is bold to deeply understand your growth strategy with your host, Jess Dewell. Get more information about how to drive solutions and reset your growth mindset at reddirection.com. Thank you for joining us, and special thanks to our post-production team at The Scott Treatment.